Hey, babes. So, thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of my new podcast that I'm starting right here, right now. I just had the idea I don't know, hour and a half ago, something like that, and I've been summoning the courage ever since to get on here and do a little something. But yeah, this will be the first episode of Midnight Tea with your host, your beautiful host, anime infinities, helping us all bloom with infinite ease as it should be, right? And yeah, the idea is that I was watching another podcast, Queer Collective on YouTube here, and yeah, it was just like so affirming. I was listening to these like trans women, trans individuals, queer individuals, just kind of like sharing their experience, and I was like, man, I want to get on there. I want to share my experience. I would love to be on a podcast. And then I was like, you have a camera, and what's stopping you from making your own, you know? And so, yeah, I figured, why not? So, thank you so much for joining. And, you know, as it is something that I came up with about an hour and a half ago or something like that, it's no longer midnight. We're well into the wee hours of the morning. But I thought, why not just like start something up, do a little chatting, and talk about some of like the impressions that I've had as I've started to embrace my transness, my my identity as a woman. Um, Even if I don't 100% have all of it down just yet, I think that there's something very powerful about that. Obviously, I kind of touched upon that a little bit in my coming out video the other day about just like starting, about having to kind of not really wait on the external to match necessarily in order to step into, truly like come into yourself, you know? Embody it in spirit, even if you can't 100% hit that ideal that you're looking for. Um, so yeah, that's what we're doing here. Um, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say, so this is kind of channeled, and that's also another part of it is like I have to trust that when I just open up and flow and connect with you all and open a door for the magic to come through, we'll find some really good stuff. So, um, yeah, I kind of wanted to like do a little bit of like thinking about or talking about some of the early experiences, I guess, that would have been like clues, you know, that's a kind of an easy low hanging fruit thing to do is to just talk about, like, yeah, what could I have noticed that could have clued me in a little bit earlier? Um, and yeah, I think that maybe one of the easy ones would be like growing up, going to school. I went to school for 3 grades till grade 3, and then on fourth grade I checked out. I did the homeschool thing, which was fantastic for me. Highly recommend. Although there may be some gaps in the social sphere with something like that, but I also really enjoyed it because I was able to kind of escape the eyes of like kind of just the general shitty kids at school. Um, and yeah, not that they're all shitty, but like a good example would be that like recess would happen and we would all go out to play. And I just found myself being like, wow, all of like the boys like really want to run around like assholes and scream and yell and throw shit at each other. And I was just like, ooh, hard pass, hard pass. Like I can run around for a minute or two, but then I would rather go sit over there in the shade and like, doesn't anyone want to just chat? Like, doesn't anyone want to talk? And like what do second graders talk about, you know? It's kind of hard to say. I ended up hanging out with like Carrie the dolphin girl who just had sort of an obsession with like little dolphins that she got from Chuck E. Cheese, you know? Those like little gummy guys. And like I don't know, there was just something a little bit more fun about like I don't know, just like talking with others about what is your imaginary world? Like what is it that you get into? And like the boys didn't want to do that. They really didn't. And I kind of was perplexed by it, couldn't really make sense of it. I was able to hang out with like fellow boys at the time, but like a few grades later, like after they kind of like discovered like video games and fingerboards and like bullshit like that, indoor activities, you know? And it was still kind of lame in its own way, but you know, we found some common ground. The fingerboards, I got in on that. The video games, I gotta say, like I wasn't allowed to really have video games until I don't know, probably like I think I got my first Game Boy when I was like 10 or something like that. But before that, all of my friends would come over on their Game Boy and just play Game Boy. And you're like, bro, what exactly is going on? Um, but like, yeah, I kind of always had more fun like hanging out with my sister. She had like all the Spice Girls Barbies. And so, like, I remember like making like a whole like cardboard like stage and like little amphitheater for like the Spice Girls, you know? Um, or like if we were out in the garden or something, I like played outside a lot when I was a kid. And so I would like build little like fairy villages, you know? You know, it was like, oh, it's for your sister, you know? It kind of, you know, you just sort of like shoehorn it in. Like, well, yeah, you're doing some girly stuff, but you're doing, you know, you what a good brother, you know, that kind of thing. And but yeah, so like those were some early indicators. There were some earlier indicators that honestly kind of put me in a a space of fear because like early on playing with other boys in ways that then I learned later might have been dubbed as like queer. And I like really internalized that and kind of got a little afraid of that and was like, whew, that I mean I legitimately kind of like thought, oh no, I think I've done the unthinkable. I think I might be going to hell. Which is kind of rough for, you know, a young child to internalize. Honestly, like growing up Christian, there was a lot of mixed messaging around like sexuality in general. Um, especially if you come from a family like mine that is religious. But at the time, it was really only my mom that was religious. My dad was not really religious at all. And so, you know, like I remember like getting the talk and like hearing, you know, just sort of like, yeah, that like what to expect and all of that. And it was interesting because like he was really good about it. He was like, yeah, you know, don't be ashamed of, you know, like, yeah, like exploring yourself, you know, on your own, you know, whatever, fantasizing. It's all good. Like, I think there was a lot of fear put in him when he was a kid. You know, he never got any chat about it. They just told him that, you know, if he did the thing, puppies would die or he'd grow hair on his palms or some bullshit like that. I mean, that is like old school ways of like dissuading the youth, you know? But no, he was like, no, yeah, you're good, you're good. I was like, awesome, all right, I'm excited about this. This is cool, you know? I'm like, it was like, you know, I kind of had that chat before I was necessarily active in any kind of way, you know, on my own. Um, but then, like, I remember like 2 or 3 years later, and Dad did get on board the, you know, the Christian train, and then I was given a book that was like sexuality for Christian men, you know, and it was like, don't touch it, don't think about it, and it was hilarious because this was like written by a guy who like he was like, oh, when I was young, I didn't do any of this stuff. I was out there chasing this and getting that, and I was like hooking up left and right, and you know, but it wasn't until I met my Christian wife, and then we decided that we wouldn't have any sex until we got married, and boy, it was like, I really wish that I had saved myself. And that's why I'm passing it on to you kids that, you like just start with a clean slate and just never go there until you're married. And that was very confusing because I'd already had a couple years of just full blown imagining and doing all the wild shit on my own. And then I learned it was all evil. Yet again, the theme repeats, right? Go off innocently and then have your have the paradigm flipped real quick for you. So I think that did a bit of like strange suppression on the old system, and I was good about it, right? I literally blocked that shit from my mind, which is fantastic, because I think that it gave me like incredible mental powers. Probably like put me ahead of the game when it comes to meditating and like one's own like ability to control your thoughts. But it also definitely put some kinks in the in the hose, if you know what I'm saying. um but I mean that doesn't necessarily all relate to my transness, I suppose. But I mean, when you're talking about sexuality and you're talking about kind of like turning that sexuality inward on yourself, because that was my answer, right? This was my like my little kind of cheat to get around the whole thing was like, well, it says in the Bible that you're not supposed to lust after somebody else, right? But once you get married, it's okay because then the two are one. And, the one body should be able to take care of itself. And I was like, well, technically, I'm already one body. I should be able to take care of myself. But I can't fantasize about anyone else, so who am I going to fucking fantasize about? And I don't think I necessarily started fantasizing about myself, but I definitely concentrated my own energy more on my sensation, more on my own kind of like connection with myself, I guess. And so like yeah, I would say that was the roots of like a slightly non-traditional or strange development like sexually. Um but it was all good. I'm very happy with where I ended up. Um, but yeah, so besides a slightly bizarro sexual like background as a child, and then also some conflicting ideas about, well, am I saved or am I damned? Like, can I earn my way back into heaven or am I fucked already? It kind of produced a certain level of like extreme examination, in my own mental realms. And it made me very cautious of, connecting outwardly in that way. So I really didn't, and again, also being homeschooled and having only the youth group as an outlet, you don't really have a whole lot of options. So um, I do think that it was a useful, interesting, weird like way to develop. Um, but again, yielded beautiful results. Um, so yeah, like there was that. There was also I mentioned before the whole Titanic thing. So specifically the scene I'm referring to is where like she's being like drawn naked, right? And I was just like, wow, like yes, that like just being gorgeous, being beautiful, like that's something that really, yeah, like it impacted me in a really nice way. And again, not really vibing necessarily with like the dude archetype in that. And so that was another cue that probably should have clued me in. But again, I can't give myself any shit for not being clued into it because truth is, like, how would you even know? Like, I didn't even know about trans people. I didn't know about non-binary people. Like that just wasn't a thing. Um, and I think if I did know about it, I probably would have, at the time in the 90s or whatever, it was being portrayed in a weird way. So that there was not necessarily any purchase for that seed to take root at the time. Um, I think the first time I really saw like my femininity, it's really interesting. I had like I said, this was in like 2013. I had this like massive spiritual kind of awakening. And after watching some Ram Dass videos, because that was kind of when I was first starting to get into like other kinds of spirituality, which is interesting because I was always very, very religious, as a kid. Like I was reading books on orthodoxy as like a, I don't know, like 12-year old. Like that's kind of weird, right? Um, but and then of course all the C.S. Lewis and all that stuff. I was super into like I knew there was something there. Like I always had like a spiritual connection, but and I knew the importance of like church and God and all of that. But what I was really like hungering for was an experience. Like I felt like a lot of it was very mental. And so that's when I started kind of turning to like Zen and like listening to a bunch of Alan Watts and Ram Dass and all of that, as you do. And yeah, I just remember having this kind of like intense spiritual like awakening. They would call it samadhi, like where a teacher gifts you kind of like a peek, a glimpse into what it's like to be enlightened. And it was incredible. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience, and it completely put my like soul at ease. Like I knew from that moment, like, oh, there is nothing wrong with anything. Like we are so good. Like you think that things could go off the rails, but like it's on rails, bro. Like it's like a roller coaster. Like it's gonna go all over the place. But like you're always on the rail. You're good. There ain't nothing wrong. Um and it was really interesting because it was the first time that I kind of started to connect with like um the universe almost as like a lover. Like I started feeling sensation as like something more than just like a sense. It took on more of a almost like personalized kind of like the universe connecting with me. Like when the breeze rolled across your hair, your face, you'd be like, wow, like I feel it like stroking me. I feel it like connecting with me. And so like there was already this deeply kind of um like sensual awareness or like body intelligence, spiritual intelligence, if you will, that kind of came online at that time. And I remember like having this incredible experience. I mean, like broke down crying. It was just like so beautiful. And let me also add, because I don't want to cheat you out of the full story. I'm not going to give you the full story, but like before that incredible breakthrough and that incredible beauty and all of that, I was sitting in meditation and I felt like this almost like intense pressure above me, this like the weight of the world, like almost like similar to these like nightmares and like kind of like frightening dreams that I had as a child, where I would always kind of like try and wake myself up and try and run out of it, go to the bathroom, splash water on your face, try and like jerk yourself out of this like really intense, like awful feeling. And that came over me as I was meditating. But then I remembered the words of Ram Dass and his teacher, Neem Karoli Baba, Maharaji. And yeah, it was like, allow this to just like surrender, let it kill you. Um, I believe he was the one who, Maharaji was the one who said, like, they asked him, like, well, how do you meditate? And he said, meditate like Christ meditated on the cross. They were like, what the fuck? It's like, he said, yeah, like meditate like Christ meditated on the cross. And they were just like, how do you do that? And then there's this beautiful like story they were telling of like how he sat back and just like entered this serene state, and then just like this like look of a love just like completely passed over his face, and he just like kind of like with tears running down his eyes going like, you don't understand, like he did not feel pain, like he felt only love, he felt only love, he felt only love. Like it wasn't, it was not the thing that they say it was. And I was like, wow, okay, if that's how Jesus could meditate on the cross, I can sit here in this and I can let it kill me, I can let it, I can let myself die to this. And so I did. I just sat there, even though like every part of me wanted to jump up, run into the bathroom. Like I thought I was going to throw up. It felt like food poisoning. It felt like I didn't know what it was going on. My heart was going crazy. I just let it peace out. I let it like simmer down. And like my breathing suddenly became like, I became much more aware of like natural breath, the breath coming in and out of my body. And I was able to smell the smell of the local mountain range. Even though we were a good little distance away and all the windows were shut, there was still that little bit of a breeze like sliding in underneath the like balcony door or whatever. And like I smelled that, and it just like it tied me so deeply into like memories of my childhood, walking through like, hiking those hills and like connecting with that. And it just like it just melted me. I just broke down crying, and I realized just how beautiful everything was, and just how we were like, just like I said, we were, it's like it was on rails. There was nothing to worry about. This ideas of sin, ideas of the right and wrong, of going to heaven or hell, like gone, just evaporated. And like, as you might imagine, that was very powerful, especially as someone who has, as a kid, as a young adult, had these kind of like feelings of like, whoa, I was just being innocently like exploring something, and now I've been told that this is evil, and then just internalizing it, keeping it to yourself. Like don't tell people about this. Maybe if it doesn't come out, then nothing will come of it. And I think that that's honestly been how I've been operating for way more of my life than I should have, or like would have been healthy. But at the same time, I'm not complaining because I love who I am. I love where I'm at. And I think that much like a seed that, is planted during a season that is not optimal for growth, that seed, that seed lies dormant. There's growth inhibitors. That thing is not going to sprout in the middle of the summer when boom, it's going to come up and it's just going to get scorched. It's not going to pop in the middle of the winter where it's going to have to push through snow and just freeze to death. No, it's going to pop when the spring comes, when that first warmth starts hitting the soil, but it's not too warm, and there's the nice sprinkles of rain, and everything's good. So I kind of see it in that same way. And that's why, my channel is called Bloom with Infinite Ease, because you think that there's a much struggle going on for that seed, for that little plant? No, not at all. Little fucker just sleeps and enjoys itself, and then when it feels that time, when it feels that warmth, just stretches. Oh, and there it is. Now you got a little flower, right? So my little flower is blooming here, and it's really interesting because I mentioned in my last video, the coming out video, that the whole trans thing was like totally occulted from me, totally, right? Like, I'm telling you all the signs. I'm going to give you more of the signs that, like, bro, how did you not? How did you not? But that's how it works, right? It's obscured, it's occulted until that moment. Boom. Now it's the right time. And it just like struck me so quickly. It was actually really funny. I made like a little TikTok video where I was like, saying, like, I was like, bro, you know how like they say like you can make your bed, now you gotta lie in it? well, like, what if we told the truth in it instead of lied in it? And then, like, it was just a dumb little thing, right? I was like, I'm just gonna, it was a silly little joke. I was like, let me just make a first TikTok video, right? Just explore this platform a little bit. And then, like, later that night, I'm laying in bed, kind of laughing about it. And then I was like, how funny would it be if, like, then I do a little video and I'm like in bed and I'm like, oh, I think I'm trans. And then I sat and I was like, wait, but like, no, for real though, oh shit, oh shit. And then, like, within a matter of a day, I was like, oh yeah, like, just all the dominoes, it all lined up, right? And it was beautiful. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, stoked, stoked, like infinitely, like much better than wherever my head was before. And so yeah, that was kind of like, that was my seed popping, my egg cracking, if you will. Um, Again, only a couple months ago, so we're still real early, um, but right on time, right on time, right on time, right on time. But anyways, back to the story. Back to the story. Um, so yeah, I had that like enlightenment moment, right? And then I was like, I remember walking into the bathroom and like looking at myself in the mirror, right? Like I took off my clothes because I don't know, that just felt right. I was like, I just want to see me, right? The clothes got to go. I want to like behold myself, right? And like that's when I like first saw, I was like looking at my body and I was like, male bodies are not that different from female bodies. And especially mine, it was like curvy in just the right places. And I was like, oh my God. I think I'm like, I think I see a girl here. And it was kind of shocking. And I think I kind of was like, I mean, I loved it. That should have been a really good sign, you know? But again, I think I was just in a place where it was like, well, that's for me. That's for me to know and not necessarily for everybody to like partake in, you know? Um, and at the time, I was like holding down a job and being very, masculine with like my coworkers and stuff. We were shooting guns and eating a lot of barbecue and all that kind of stuff, and I was working out and all that. And but it was interesting because even after that, when I would like work out and weight would fluctuate and stuff, there was a sweet spot, right? I never wanted to be like too like cut, right? Too shredded. No, not that that was really like I had to do a lot of work not to be too shredded, but like there were times where I got like more bulked up, more kind of muscular, and I lost the curves. And like it it didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well with me. I was like, I think I like to be just the right amount of curvy, and too much, like too big and you just kind of lost it, and too skinny, well, that wasn't really a problem for me, but it became more of a thing a little bit later in life when I started going into the veganism and stuff and all that, I especially when I went to the raw vegan and juice only diets and shit like that. So I definitely lost a bunch of weight back then. And some of the curve disappeared. I started getting a little too like, gaunt in the face and like I like my cheekies, I like these like, oh, they're so cute, and like my titties, they were looking good when there was a little bit of a curve, a little bit of something there. And so I definitely like all of those things should have been great indicators. Um, but yeah, I mean, these are just a couple of the signs, and I don't know exactly whether like it's kind of an unfocused first episode, Yeah, let's take a little side turn on that whole thing, right? on the idea of like, again, starting wherever the hell you are and making the space that you want for yourself, because that's another huge lesson that I've found, and kind of a theme here, even just in what I've already spoken about, at least within like the me and my peers kind of realm of like playing with like the girls, as opposed to being kind of more the traditional like boy, at the time. And I think that like by being a little bit odd, being a little bit different in my like interests, I ended up kind of carving out my own spaces and creating my own like little fantasy worlds. And like I had a ball, when I was a kid, I was super, super crafty and I always loved everything miniature, right? Um, I I would like I said, I make the little Barbie stadium, I made the like fairy gardens and shit like that. But then I kind of got into like, a little bit more of a fantasy kind of vibe, and I started making castles out of cardboard and we're like just kind of like very world buildy, And then I started making little ships and bottles, like like legitimately like little bottle like this, tiny bottle the thickness of your finger. I would fucking make this tiny little ship in a bottle out of like a toothpick and like tiny little wires. And I remember I had a ship sitting on the water with mountain range behind it and a little pier, all in a bottle, like no joke, 2.5 inches long by like probably less than an inch in diameter. That's kind of like a fun little like I created my own little worlds to disappear into. And I kind of feel like that's what we're doing here, right? We're creating our own little world to disappear into because honestly, as someone who has kind of like, I guess, misrepresented myself via like sticking with what's safe and sticking with like the kind of like masculine archetype that I had just been sort of handed. Um, I kind of have felt in a lot of ways that I just didn't necessarily fit in with a lot of groups. I can do pretty good. I can hang, Um, Usually I can do pretty well for like a portion of time, and then eventually something kind of kind of flips, Either I lose interest or I get the sense that I'm not necessarily like accepted fully as part of the group. And so I would just kind of like diverge, dip, go do my own thing, right? And podcasting, right? Speaking on camera, sharing my truth, this is something that has been calling me ever since that like first enlightenment, right? Back in 2013, I was like, at the time, I was like, I gotta get on camera, I gotta start doing a thing. And then the doubt crept in, right? And I was like, well, I mean, but like who am I like really to be able to like get on here and tell people what's up, especially spiritually. Like I'm not wise enough to do that necessarily. Like maybe I should let this mature, give it a year or two, give it a couple years. Fast forward freaking, what is that, like another 13 years, 13 years, yeah, 13 years of enlightenment. I mean, it's not been full enlightenment the whole time. There's been some ups and downs for sure. Just this very morning, I woke up like literally cursing out my guides. I was like, I asked for good dreams and you freaking gave me that? I had some weird dreams. And it happens, it happens. I was like very frustrated. I've been going through some releasing of like, again, old relationships, old identities, and it's good. It's like that first enlightenment. Some of the nastiest, heaviest existential dread comes up right before you let, give up the ghost, right? Like, let it go, fucking let it go. And that weight lifts off of you, and suddenly you remember, hey, this is way more natural than I thought it was. Like I don't have to trip about it, I don't have to go sit on a mountain for 1,000 years and learn to hover, you know? I mean, I'm hoping the hovering comes soon, you know. I've been playing some video games where I can fly, and if I can do it in there, then by golly, I don't see why I can't do it here. Not that much of a difference, is there? But what the fuck was I even talking about? Point being that yeah, it's really interesting how like we kind of go through these periods of time where like we almost super lose sight of like what is true for us because we get so focused on what has been true for us, like has been true, like historically or, like societally, maybe, within our families, within our friends. And at least for me, I kind of get like really cemented into those things because I'm like pretty chameleon esque. I can flow and honestly, I can connect with almost anyone. Like, I have not really met anyone that I'm just like, wow, there's just no way for me to connect with these fools. Well, there's been a few. I joined the Boy Scouts when I was a kid for less than a year, like 2 or 3 outings, I think. Probably when I was, I don't know, again, somewhere in that like between 10 and 13 kind of range. And like, yo, low key, Boy Scouts are little fucking assholes. They're miscreants. Like, they are ne'er do wells, as my dad would say. Um, not exactly the upstanding, beautiful, like patriotic group that you think they might be, at least from my experience. So take it with a grain of salt, but I take that also as another one of those like, yeah, that was extreme boy culture and you were not about it. You were just not about it. And also like, yeah, I I was just like the things that y'all are doing just are not exciting to me. They seem stupid. Like honestly, low key, I was offended by a lot of it. Like I was like this is dumb. This is dumb. Like I'm angry that I have to participate with these dumb people doing stupid shit. Like literally like sending you on a snipe hunt for like imaginary creatures while you're out, you know, camping. It's like what the fuck is this weird ass hazing shit? Like that is a whole bizarre cultural thing. Like anyways, we're going off on a tangent, but yeah, so, like I had said in my other video, I always kind of like resonated more with chicks. I just had more friends that were girls. I like enjoyed the conversation better, enjoyed the like yeah, like non-retarded excuse me, non-stupid behavior. um I've since grown to appreciate a bit of stupidity. I think that, a little bit of trashiness, a little bit of stupidity, with the right with the right spiritual eyes, you can see the beauty in it. I honestly have kind of like I think it almost needs to happen at a certain point. Living in like the country we live in and the time we live in, like if you can't appreciate a bit of like the dum dum, like you're probably not going to like have a great time in this time and era, or you're just going to have to fully build your own thing. But I kind of found it as like comedy, like I would find the sort of dark comedy and the stupidity of it, and also like just because something is dumb doesn't mean that it's bad, like there's like a lot of things that are dumb that I kind of like revel in how stupid they are because it's beautiful in its own weird way. um, and I think that that's honestly like really healthy spiritual like immune system technology, I guess, because if you allow that stuff to upset you or piss you off too much, then like you just end up with being pissed off and angry about it. But if you can appreciate the dumbness, and kind of appreciate the ugliness of it all a little bit, it really helps, it'll help you kind of get over any little self judgments. It'll help you get over the judgments of others and, not necessarily high road too much. And also it just creates like a sense of like warmth around it as opposed to division. I think that that is something that I've always been really good at, is uniting uniting people who might have a different perspective. um, but at the same time I can see their perspective, and so I can kind of like hear them out, talk to like that perspective a little bit. Yeah, I get you, etc., etc. And then you have an ally instead of someone that you're fighting with, because as much as I like to have a little bit of a debate here and there, I also quickly realized that other people don't like it when you have a debate and you win. Then they think you're arguing with them, they get real angry and they leave. So, you know, again, getting isolated throughout my years in different ways, I've learned to kind of go like, all right, there's a way to go about this, and there's a way to not go about this. And you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar or something like that. I don't know if that's actually even true, because a lot of flies really like disgusting things. Maybe it's bees. Catch more bees with honey? I don't know, but that doesn't make any sense either. Like, the bees are making their own honey. I don't think they need to like get stuck in honey. I mean, they're like pros at jittering around on top of honey, I would imagine. If they ever got stuck, they'd probably just eat their way out, right? So I don't know if that makes any sense, but where am I going? Where am I going? I don't know. It's a podcast. That's the beautiful thing I loved about podcasts. I think I first started listening to podcasts with the Mark Maron podcast, like way back in, I don't know, like 2014, 2015, something like that. I think it was 2014 when I was over in China doing some toy design work, right? I'm a degreed certified toy designer. I only did it for a little while because I just didn't like getting sent all over the place. You know, in general, I don't like when other people run my life. And I think that that's also another reason that I didn't fit in real well with groups, and also probably another reason why I have not remained necessarily in one committed monogamous relationship till death do we part. um, Although I do believe that all of those relationships that I have been in, they were all exactly what they needed to be, and I don't think that they're dead either. I think that a lot of times these things, they take time, and obviously it's going to be different when you reconnect, but I believe in a world where we all at the end of the day get to see each other's perspectives and, like, yeah, appreciate what we bring to the table, and end up actually having a true relationship with each other, as opposed to, yeah, some sort of a societal convention that kind of locks everybody in and forces everyone to kind of like stay static a little bit, or creates these invisible walls. Now, I'm not saying like that's the truth for everyone. I'm just saying that's been my experience so far. Um, and as someone who has gradually like embraced more of myself, necessarily those relationships have shifted, and a few of them have ended. That was another thing that I think was also part of this morning's like turmoil, was one of my more recent relationships that ended, was extremely deep and extremely intense, and like all the feels, and I feel deeply. I may seem like a real tough cookie, I know, but no, I'm a softie. I'm a tender heart. I love very deeply. I love like no holds barred, and that's dangerous for yourself. But it's also really fucking good, because you're planting amazing seeds, and even if they don't, again, sprout at that moment, you're doing like the Lord's work. Like those seeds, that you put them down to the best of your ability, and that they're going to come back around at the right time. And much like permaculture, plants benefit each other, even if they're not the same plant, even if they're not necessarily like entwined together in the same way that maybe at first when they were little, they kind of grew at the same rate, but then one of them's a big old shade tree, and it actually provides the shade necessary for that other plant to grow to its like most full, vibrant, luscious kind of, yeah, living its best plant life, right? And they all help each other out. So I think that's kind of what we all are, right? We're not that different, are we? From the plant kingdom, the flora from the fauna, as they say. So yeah, I'm rambling, rambling, rambling. I hope you're enjoying this. I don't know if there's a whole lot more. Let me take a couple moments and collect my thoughts. Hang on, hang on, hang on. Let me whip my hair around. Oh wow, that's I got like a comb over there. That's not quite right. All right, here we go. Final thoughts. Final thoughts. We did it. We did it. We did it. So yeah, I made a podcast, and you, my dear reader, dear viewer. I don't know, what are you? A reader, a viewer? We gotta put a pin in that. It depends. Listener. That's it. Listener, viewer, reader, channeler, friend, babe, my love. Thank you for tuning in and for joining me and helping create this itty bitty little micro world in a bottle, right? Or in a phone screen or whatever, a series of tubes. I don't know exactly how the internets work. I know it's not a big truck. But yeah, this has been nice. And I think I'm going to do more of these just off the cuff, fucking ramble, 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 because I mean, I've literally reached out. How sad is this? I fucking reached out to people being like, hey, hey, I'm interesting. I'm real smart. I should be on your podcast. And they're like, yeah, thanks. I'll keep your name. You know, kind of like applying for a job around here. Put in a resume. Well, one of these days, maybe. No, maybe. Fuck all that, right? No, I'm not out there chasing that shit. I'm a creator. I'm a bad bitch. I'm a I'm a spiritual woman. I mean, that's the other thing too. As a creative, what is creation? Creation is inherently feminine. It's inherently like, yeah, the womb, the womb man. You're a man with a womb. you know. I love how all the words just kind of like connect up and like tell you their secret meaning underneath it all. We'll have to do an episode on that. If you're interested in that, let me know, because I have a whole bunch of words that they don't say that this is how they actually are, but like womb man, like it's very simple. Look it up though, and they're not going to tell you that that's the etymology of woman. They're just not. They're going to say some other bullshit. So, but I got wicked good ideas. I got this crazy third eye. And I think it's been because I've been sitting on it for so long, right? I let all that stuff mature. I guess I was right to let it mature for 13 years. But maybe from a you know trans standpoint, there may be some advantageous elements to coming out when you're a bit younger. If I had done that when I was like in my early 20s, I would have been super hot girl. But as it is, I'm still gonna be a very super hot girl. You wait and see. And yeah, I hope you're doing fucking well. I hope that if you're watching this at midnight, you go to bed soon. I definitely need to go to bed soon. It's probably pushing 3 o'clock around here, but in the future, I'm going to try and release them more or film them at least more in the midnight hour. But yeah, I don't know. Sending you lots and lots of love, and thank you again. And yeah, this has been fun. Peace, y'all.